So now we come to status, Weber's concept of status as the second source of power, and it's also the second ideal type that he introduces. Yeah? Because remember, status, class, and party are ideal types, abstractions or useful abstractions, but they actually mingle in reality. But first we need to understand them separately. And this is also the part where we get to the real differences between Weber and Marx, because Marx only focused on class, so sheer economic power. Now Weber complicates the picture of social stratification by introducing status.
So Marx just like focused on the physical things, right? Is that right?
Simply on, for Weber, class is about economic power, and in that it's quite similar to Marx, because Marx defined class as the possession of the means of production for the bourgeoisie, and if you don't have the means of production, if you have nothing to sell but your labor power, then you're part of the proletariat. And Weber had said that, yes, this is still the distinction for class, the possession of goods, or your ability to sell skills in the labor market. But for Weber, class is not a group. Class is a class position. It's just a position in the market, whatever market it is. Yeah? Either in the labor market, if you only have skills to sell, or if you have different forms of capital. If you're a rentier who's living off capital gains tax, for example, of capital gains, then you're part of the rentier class, the property class. And now Weber introduces status as a second element in stratification. And the distinction to class, first of all, is that status is about honor, so about the distribution of social esteem in society. So it's not sheer economic prowess, the possession of goods, or any skills that you have to offer for the market, but the esteem in which you're held by society.
Like something immaterial, kind of? Or?
Yeah. Even though we will see later, of course, it is, in actual reality, there's a connection to class, but per se, status itself directly has only to do with honor, with social esteem. And then second, status is about groups. It's not simply a position in the market, but it's actually the basis for groups. These groups are often amorphous. There are no strict boundaries that make you part of one status group, but they are groups. They're shared. They're based on a shared style of life. So those provide, the style of life provides the distinction between different status groups. And this is most often expressed as a monopoly on certain material or ideal goods. So if you think, for example, of the ability to send your children to Harvard. Yes, of course, there's a money element involved here, but you belong to a certain group, you have a certain style of life that gives you access to Ivy League institutions like Harvard. Think also of examples like going shopping on Fifth Avenue, going to Bergdorf Goodman, or even better, say being invited to a fundraising event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, to becoming an art donor. Yes, of course, you need the money to do that. Hypothetically, you can be invited to a fundraising event at the Metropolitan Museum if you have enough money to do that. You can walk into Bergdorf Goodman if you have the credit cards that give you the ability to pay for those goods, but you will feel awkward if you are not part of those social circles who do these kinds of things. So at a fundraising event of the Metropolitan, it is probably your, what Bourdieu, a French sociologist, calls your habitus, will out you as not being quite part of those social circles. Shopping at Bergdorf Goodman, probably the clerks will immediately recognize you as someone who's not exactly part of those social circles, even if you have the money to pay for those goods. So it's based on shared social circles, moving in the same social circles, consuming the same items, but it's not about the sheer material possession, but about the symbolic meaning of those goods, either actual goods or ideal goods. Of course, the issue of so-called luxury goods is an interesting example, because in times when there are Chinese knockoffs to be bought, owning a Hermes bag does not exactly qualify you anymore as being part of those social circles who can consume these kinds of things. So it's cheapening those things. Actually now, wearing a Gucci eyeglasses is
Mhm.
actually the sign of a lack of status, yeah?
Mhm.
Because it is freely available in the marketplace, really
Mhm.
cheap. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it does not give you that exclusivity anymore that a luxury good is supposed to give you.
Mhm.
Luxury goods are luxury goods not because they cost a lot of money, but because their use is restricted to certain social
Yeah.
circles.
So I guess it shows that even though it's expressed in material goods, it's always something kind of
Symbolic
immaterial.
meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. Most often, however, the boundaries of status groups through shared lifestyle is actually defined in contemporary society by religion and above all ethnicity. Yeah? So ethnic groups and religious groups we would consider to be status groups, because what defines you as part of those circles is not your economic prowess, but certain shared cultural practices that define you as being of one religion and one ethnic group. But of course, indirectly, but only indirectly, of course, class situation is flowing into status distinction. Yeah? It's one avenue that can over time give you status, but indirectly, and we will have to come back to that in the end to explain the exact connection between status and class that Weber is proposing. Yeah? But it is based directly on shared cultural practices in the broadest aspect.